The early morning light filtered through the bedroom curtains, casting an ethereal glow on the meticulously decorated room. Jacob stirred, his brow creased with a growing sense of unease. Something felt off. An unseen shift in the routine he had grown accustomed to over the years of his marriage to Amelia. As he rolled over, his eyes landed on Amelia's side of the bed, neatly made and seemingly untouched. A pang of concern gripped him, and he reached for his phone, only to find a series of unanswered messages and missed calls from the previous night. Anxiety slowly tightened its grip around his heart. Pushing himself out of bed, Jacob made his way downstairs, the floorboards creaking under his weight. The house was eerily quiet, save for the ticking of the grandfather clock in the foyer. He paused, straining his ears for any sign of Amelia's presence, but the silence was deafening. Crossing the living room, Jacob's gaze fell upon a stack of papers haphazardly left on the coffee table. Curiosity getting the better of him, he picked them up, his breath catching in his throat as he recognized the contents: bank statements, hotel receipts, and a series of coded messages that could only mean one thing. Amelia was having an affair. Jacob's world seemed to tilt on its axis as the realization settled in, his mind racing to comprehend the implications of this betrayal. How long had this been going on? Who was the other person? Million questions swirled in his mind, each one more unsettling than the last. Clutching the incriminating documents, Jacob sank into the plush leather armchair, his fingers trembling. The comfortable familiarity of his own home now felt like a foreign, unwelcoming space, tainted by the weight of Amelia's deception. As he sat there, his mind grappling with the implications of this discovery, Jacob knew that his life would never be the same. The foundations of his marriage, the very bedrock upon which he had built his existence, had been shattered, and now he was faced with an unthinkable task: to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. With a steely determination, Jacob rose from the chair, his jaw set with a resolve that belied the turmoil raging within. He would get to the bottom of this, even if it meant delving into the darkest corners of his wife's life and his own. The game had begun, and Jacob was ready to play. The following day, Jacob found himself driving aimlessly through the winding streets of Portland, his mind consumed by the earth-shattering revelations he had uncovered the previous morning. The neat stack of incriminating documents rested on the passenger seat, a constant reminder of the betrayal that had shaken the very foundation of his life. As he navigated the familiar route, his thoughts drifted to Amelia, his wife of 15 years. Where was she now? What was she doing? And more importantly, who was she with? The questions tormented him, gnawing at his conscience like a relentless parasite. Deciding he needed to take action, Jacob pulled into the driveway of his longtime family friend, Madison. The two had known each other since childhood, and he hoped that she might be able to provide some insight into Amelia's recent behavior. Stepping out of the car, Jacob approached the front door, his heart pounding in his chest. With a deep breath, he rang the bell, steeling himself for the conversation to come. The door swung open, revealing Madison's warm, familiar face. "Jacob, this is a surprise," she exclaimed, her brows furrowing with concern as she took in his tense demeanor. "What's wrong?" Jacob cleared his throat, his eyes meeting hers with a pleading sincerity. "Madison, I need your help. It's about Amelia." "Amelia?" Madison's expression shifted to one of puzzlement. "What's going on?" Jacob hesitated, unsure of how to proceed. "I found something that suggests Amelia might be." He trailed off, the words catching in his throat. Madison's gaze softened with understanding. "Jacob, why don't you come inside? We can talk about this in private." Nodding gratefully, Jacob followed Madison into her cozy living room, the weight of the documents in his pocket serving as a constant reminder of the crisis at hand. Once they were seated, Madison turned to him, her eyes filled with concern. "What is it, Jacob? What did you find out?" Jacob took a deep breath, steeling himself for the revelation. "I think Amelia is having an affair." Madison's eyes widened in shock, her lips parting slightly as she processed the information. "An affair? Are you sure?" "I found these," Jacob said, pulling the incriminating documents from his pocket and handing them to Madison. "Bank statements, hotel receipts, coded messages. It all points to her being involved with someone else." Madison's brow furrowed as she carefully examined the papers, her expression growing more somber with each passing moment. "Oh, Jacob," she murmured, her voice laced with sympathy. "I'm so sorry." Jacob felt a lump forming in his throat, the reality of the situation finally sinking in. "I don't know what to do, Madison. I'm completely lost." "Can't imagine how you must be feeling right now," Madison replied, reaching out to squeeze his hand reassuringly. "But you're not alone. I'm here for you, Jacob. Whatever you need." Jacob nodded, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Thank you, Madison. I just don't know where to start. I need to find out who this other person is, but I'm afraid of what I might discover." Madison offered him a sympathetic smile. "I know it's not easy, but you have to be strong, for yourself and for Amelia. This is going to be a difficult path, but I'll be right here with you, every step of the way." Jacob took a deep breath, his resolve hardening. "All right, then let's get started." Over the next few days, Jacob found himself consumed by a relentless pursuit of the truth. With Madison's unwavering support, he delved deeper into the web of deceit, leaving no stone unturned in his quest to uncover Amelia's mysterious lover. One evening, as Jacob sat in his car, parked discreetly outside a high-end hotel, his heart raced with a mixture of anticipation and dread. This was the moment of truth, the moment he would come face to face with the person who had betrayed him. As he watched the front entrance, his eyes narrowed when he spotted a familiar figure emerging. Amelia, her arm linked with a tall, distinguished-looking man. Jacob's grip tightened on the steering wheel as he recognized the man as Carter, a successful entrepreneur with whom he had occasionally crossed paths in the business world. Swallowing the lump in his throat, Jacob opened the car door and stepped out, his gaze fixed on the retreating couple. "Amelia," he called out, his voice laced with a barely contained fury. Amelia froze, her eyes widening in shock as she turned to face her husband. "Jacob, what are you doing here?" Jacob strode towards them, his expression darkening. "I think you know exactly why I'm here, Amelia. And you," he said, turning his attention to Carter. "I should have known you were the one." Carter raised his hands in a placating gesture, his features betraying a hint of unease. "Jacob, my friend, let's not make a scene here." "Friend?" Jacob scoffed, the bitterness in his voice palpable. "You're no friend of mine. You're the man who's been sleeping with my wife." Amelia's eyes darted between the two men, a flicker of panic crossing her face. "Jacob, please, let's discuss this somewhere more private." Jacob let out a humorless laugh. "Discuss it? You've betrayed me, Amelia. Both of you have. And now, I'm going to get to the bottom of this, no matter what it takes." Carter's expression hardened, his eyes narrowing with a thinly veiled threat. "I think you're making a mistake here, Jacob. This is not a game you want to play." The air crackled with tension as the three figures stood locked in a silent standoff, the future of their relationships hanging precariously in the balance. The confrontation in the hotel parking lot had left Jacob reeling, his world upended by the devastating revelations about his wife's infidelity and her lover's involvement. As he paced the confines of his dimly lit study, the weight of the moral dilemmas he now faced pressed heavily upon him. On one hand, Jacob's desire for the truth burned with an unrelenting fervor. He yearned to uncover every sordid detail, to lay bare the extent of the betrayal that had shattered the foundation of his marriage. The very thought of Amelia and Carter's illicit affair festered within him, a poison that threatened to consume his every waking moment. Yet, as he contemplated his next move, Jacob couldn't help but grapple with the ethical quandaries that lay before him. What were the limits of his pursuit of justice? How far was he willing to go to expose the truth, even if it meant irrevocably damaging the lives of those around him? Sinking into the plush leather armchair, Jacob buried his face in his hands, a heavy sigh escaping his lips. The path forward was shrouded in uncertainty, fraught with the risk of irreparable consequences. "I can't just let this go," he muttered to himself, his fingers clenching and unclenching as he wrestled with his inner turmoil. But what if the truth is worse than the lies? The specter of his own moral failings began to haunt him, the echoes of his past indiscretions whispering like a cruel taunt. How could he judge Amelia and Carter when he, too, had once walked a perilous line, his own actions tainted by the seductive allure of temptation? Jacob's mind raced, grappling with the weight of his choices. Should he confront Amelia and Carter again, demand a full accounting of their betrayal? Or should he retreat, to preserve what little remained of his marriage and his own fragile sense of self? The decision before him was not one of simple right and wrong, but rather a tangled web of nuance and consequence. Each path held the potential for both redemption and ruin, and Jacob found himself paralyzed by the uncertainty that loomed over him. As the clock on the mantel chimed, signaling the late hour, Jacob lifted his head, his eyes resolute with a newfound determination. He would not shy away from this challenge. He would face it head-on, no matter the cost. For in the crucible of this crisis he knew that he would be forged anew, transformed by the fire of his own moral convictions. With a deep breath, Jacob rose from his chair, his steps purposeful, as he made his way towards the door. The game had changed, and he was prepared to play, even if it meant risking everything he had once held dear. In the days that followed, Jacob found himself drawn deeper into the web of deception that had enveloped his life. With an unwavering determination, he delved into Amelia's past, meticulously piecing together the clues that would unveil the truth about her relationship with Carter. One evening, as he sat in his study, poring over a stack of documents, the doorbell rang, interrupting his concentration. Cautiously, he approached the front door, unsure of who might be calling at this hour. On opening it, Jacob was greeted by the familiar face of Madison, her expression one of both concern and resolution. "Madison," Jacob said, his brow furrowing. "What are you doing here?" "Jacob, we need to talk," Madison replied, her voice laced with a sense of urgency. "I've been doing some digging of my own, and I think I've uncovered something you need to know." Jacob ushered her inside, his heart racing with a mixture of anticipation and dread. "What have you found?" Madison took a deep breath, her eyes meeting his with a grave intensity. "It's about Amelia and Carter. There's more to their relationship than we thought." Jacob felt his stomach tighten, the weight of her words settling upon him like a heavy cloak. "Tell me," he said, bracing himself for the revelation. "I found evidence that their affair goes back much further than we realized," Madison began, her fingers trembling slightly as she produced a stack of documents. "It seems they've been involved for years, long before you and Amelia were even married." Jacob's eyes widened in disbelief as he scanned the documents, his mind struggling to process the implications. "But how is that possible? Amelia and we've been together for over a decade. How could she have been?" "I'm sorry, Jacob," Madison interrupted, her voice laced with empathy. I know this must be devastating to hear, but it appears that Amelia has been deceiving you for a very long time. Jacob felt the blood drain from his face, his hands trembling as he stared at the incriminating evidence. All this time, she's been lying to me. His voice was barely above a whisper, the weight of the betrayal crushing him. Madison reached out, placing a comforting hand on his arm. I'm so sorry, Jacob. I can't imagine how you must be feeling right now. Jacob's eyes glistened with unshed tears, his mind reeling with the implications of this newfound revelation. I trusted her, Madison. Trusted them both. How could they do this to me? I wish I had better news, Madison replied, her own expression etched with sorrow. But you deserve to know the truth, no matter how painful it may be. Jacob nodded, his jaw set with a determined resolve. Thank you, Madison, for bringing this to me, and for standing by me through all of this. Madison offered him a compassionate smile. Of course, Jacob. I'll be here for you, every step of the way. As the weight of Madison's words settled upon him, Jacob knew that the path ahead would be arduous, filled with more hidden truths and moral dilemmas than he could have ever imagined. But he was prepared to face them, no matter the cost. For in unraveling the secrets that had been so meticulously hidden from him, he would finally find the answers he so desperately sought. As the days turned into weeks, Jacob found himself spiraling deeper into an obsessive pursuit of the truth. The revelations uncovered by Madison had only served to fuel his relentless crusade, driving him to the brink of his own sanity. Amelia's betrayal, now laid bare before him, had shattered the very foundation of his existence. The woman he had loved, the person he had trusted implicitly, had been weaving an elaborate web of lies for years, betraying him with her longtime lover, Carter. Jacob's once orderly life had descended into a maelstrom of suspicion and paranoia. He found himself constantly on the move, trailing Amelia and Carter, watching their every move, searching for any scrap of evidence that would further unravel the tangled web of their deception. His days were consumed by an endless cycle of investigation, fueled by a manic energy that bordered on the obsessive. He pored over financial records, phone logs, and security camera footage, piecing together a narrative that grew ever more convoluted and disturbing. As his obsession deepened, Jacob began to neglect his own well-being, forgoing sleep and proper meals in his single-minded pursuit of the truth. The lines between reality and delusion began to blur, and he found himself questioning the very fabric of his existence. One particularly restless night, Jacob sat in his darkened study, staring blankly at the walls, his mind a whirlwind of disjointed thoughts. Suddenly, he was overcome by a haunting sensation, a palpable feeling of being watched. Whirling around, his eyes scanned the room, searching for any sign of an intruder. But the room remained empty, the only sound the steady ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. I know you're out there, Jacob whispered into the darkness, his voice laced with a desperate edge. I know you're both watching me. He rose from his chair, his movements erratic and unsure, as he began to pace the room, his gaze darting from one shadowy corner to the next. You can't hide from me, Amelia, he muttered, his fingers clawing at the sides of his head. I'll find you. I'll find you both, and I'll expose your lies. The room seemed to close in around him, the shadows taunting him, the silence deafening. Jacob felt as if he were trapped in a labyrinth of his own creation, with no way out. In that moment, he realized with a sickening clarity that his pursuit of the truth had come at a terrible cost. The erosion of his own sanity. The weight of his obsession had become a crushing burden, threatening to consume him entirely. As he sank back into the chair, Jacob's once steely resolve crumbled, and he wept bitterly, the tears streaming down his face like a river of anguish. The darkness had enveloped him, and he was powerless to stop its relentless advance. The old grandfather clock in the foyer chimed, signaling the late hour as Jacob paced the living room, his mind consumed by a maelstrom of emotions. The weight of his obsession had taken a heavy toll, leaving him worn and haggard, his once sharp senses dulled by the relentless pursuit of the truth. Suddenly, the sound of the front door opening shattered the eerie silence, and Jacob whirled around to find Amelia standing in the entryway, her expression a mixture of surprise and trepidation. "Jacob," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You're still up." Jacob's eyes narrowed, his jaw set with a hard, determined edge. "Where have you been, Amelia?" Amelia hesitated, her gaze darting away. I was out with a friend. I should have called to let you know." "A friend?" Jacob scoffed, his voice dripping with bitter sarcasm. "Don't insult my intelligence, Amelia. I know all about your little friend Carter." Amelia's eyes widened, and she took a step back, a flicker of panic crossing her face. "Jacob, I can explain." "Explain?" Jacob interrupted, his volume rising with each word. "There's nothing to explain, Amelia. I know the truth. I know about your affair, your lies, everything." Amelia opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. The silence between them was deafening, thick with the weight of betrayal and the impending reckoning. After a moment, Amelia finally found her voice. "How long have you known?" Jacob let out a humorless laugh. "Long enough to piece together your web of deceit. How could you do this to me, Amelia? To our marriage?" Amelia's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "I never meant to hurt you, Jacob. It just happened. I never wanted any of this." "Bullshit," Jacob spat, his eyes narrowing with a fury that threatened to consume him. "You made a choice, Amelia. You chose to betray me, to betray our vows. And now, you're going to have to live with the consequences." Amelia opened her mouth to speak, but the sound of the front door opening once more interrupted her. In stepped Carter, his expression one of surprise and unease as he took in the charged atmosphere. "Jacob," Carter said, his voice laced with a hint of caution. "I didn't expect to see you here." Jacob turned his gaze to Carter, his eyes burning with a seething hatred. "Oh, I'm here, Carter. And I know all about your little affair with my wife." Carter's features hardened, his jaw tightening. "I think there's been a misunderstanding here." "Misunderstanding?" Jacob scoffed, taking a menacing step towards Carter. "You and Amelia have been betraying me for years, and you think this is a misunderstanding?" Amelia stepped between the two men, her hands raised in a placating gesture. "Jacob, please. Let's just talk about this. We can work this out. I promise." Jacob's gaze flickered between Amelia and Carter, bitter realization dawning on him. "Work it out? There's nothing to work out. You've both destroyed everything we had." The air crackled with tension as the three figures stood locked in a standoff, the future of their relationships hanging by a thread. Jacob knew that this was the moment of reckoning, the point of no return, and as he stared into the eyes of the two people he had trusted the most, he felt a deep, searing anguish that threatened to consume him. The confrontation in the living room had left Jacob reeling, the weight of Amelia and Carter's betrayal crushing him like an unbearable burden. As he stood amidst the shattered remnants of his once stable life, he felt a profound sense of loss, not just for his marriage, but for the very foundations upon which he had built his entire existence. The hours that followed were a blur of emotion, a tumultuous storm of anger, hurt, and disbelief that threatened to tear him apart from the inside. Jacob paced the empty halls of his home, the silence punctuated only by the occasional sob that escaped his lips. Amelia had pleaded with him, begging for forgiveness and a chance to make amends, but Jacob had no more patience for her lies. The trust that had once been the bedrock of their relationship had been irreparably shattered, and he knew that there could be no going back, no matter how much she might wish it. As for Carter, the man he had once considered a business associate and, at times, even a friend, Jacob felt a seething rage that threatened to consume him. The idea that Carter had been sleeping with his wife, betraying him in the most intimate of ways, was a betrayal that he found almost impossible to fathom. In a moment of utter despair, Jacob found himself standing before the fireplace, his gaze fixed on the flickering flames that danced before him. The warmth of the fire seemed to mock him, a cruel reminder of the warmth and comfort that had once filled this home, a home that now felt like a hollow, lifeless shell. Slowly, he reached into his pocket, his fingers closing around the stack of incriminating documents that had been the catalyst for this unraveling. With a heavy heart, he tossed them into the fire, watching as the pages curled and blackened, the evidence of his wife's infidelity consumed by the hungry flames. As the last of the documents disappeared, Jacob sank to his knees, his shoulders shaking with the weight of his anguish. The life he had built, the legacy he had so carefully cultivated, lay shattered around him, a testament to the fragility of the human experience. In the depths of his despair, Jacob found himself questioning everything: his values, his judgments, his very sense of self. Had he been so blinded by his own ego, his own need for control, that he had failed to see the cracks in his own foundation? Had his pursuit of the truth, his relentless drive to uncover the lies, ultimately led him to this moment of reckoning? The question swirled in his mind, unanswerable and torturous, leaving him adrift in a sea of uncertainty. He knew that the path forward would not be an easy one, that the scars of this betrayal would forever shape the course of his life. But as the last embers of the fire died down, Jacob felt a resolve begin to take root within him. He would not be defined by this moment of anguish. He would emerge from the ashes, transformed by the crucible of his own trials. And in doing so, he would forge a new legacy, one that would be built upon the foundations of his own resilience and the lessons he had learned, however painfully, along the way. As the sun rose on a new day, Jacob found himself standing at the threshold of his front door, his gaze fixed on the horizon. The events of the past weeks had left an indelible mark on his soul, a weight that seemed to bear down upon him with each passing moment. Yet, as he stood there, a sense of resolve began to take root within him. He had been broken, shattered by the betrayal of those he had trusted the most, but he refused to let that define him. In the crucible of his anguish, he had been forged anew, tempered by the harsh realities of life, and the knowledge that true strength often emerges from the depths of our darkest moments. With a deep breath, Jacob stepped out into the world, his steps purposeful and his gaze unwavering. The path ahead was shrouded in uncertainty, but he knew that he could no longer afford to be paralyzed by the fear of the unknown. He had to move forward, to reclaim the power that had been stolen from him, and to build a new legacy, one that would stand as a testament to his resilience and his unwavering spirit. As he walked, Jacob felt the weight of the past begin to lift, replaced by a growing sense of purpose and determination. He knew that the road to healing would not be an easy one, but he was prepared to face it head-on, fueled by a newfound resolve that burned within him like a raging fire. In the distance, he caught a glimpse of Madison, her familiar face etched with a mixture of concern and relief as she saw him approaching. Without a word, she enveloped him in a warm embrace, her support and unwavering friendship a lifeline in the turbulent sea of his existence. "I'm here for you, Jacob," she whispered, her voice laced with a quiet strength. "Whatever you need, I'm by your side." Jacob nodded, a small but genuine smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "Thank you, Madison. I couldn't have made it this far without you." As they walked side by side, Jacob knew that the path ahead would be filled with challenges, both internal and external. But with Madison's steadfast support and his own indomitable spirit, he was determined to forge a new life, one that would rise from the ashes of his shattered legacy. The future, once shrouded in darkness, now held the promise of a brighter tomorrow. A tomorrow where he would reclaim his power, his identity, and his own sense of self. And as he embraced this newfound resolve, Jacob knew that he was ready to face whatever trials awaited him, his heart filled with a quiet confidence that would guide him on his journey of self-discovery and redemption. As Jacob embarks on his journey of healing and self-discovery, what lessons or insights do you think he might uncover along the way? How do you think his experiences could resonate with your own life, and what wisdom might you draw from his story? This captivating tale of betrayal, anguish, and the indomitable human spirit has unfolded before your eyes. Now, we invite you to ponder the profound questions that arise from Jacob's journey. What lessons can we learn from his struggle to overcome the shattered trust and reclaim his sense of self? How might his story resonate with your own experiences? And what wisdom can you glean to apply in your own life? Invite you to share your thoughts, insights, and personal reflections in the comments below. Your views will not only enrich the discussion, but also inspire others who may be facing similar challenges. Together, let's explore the powerful themes in this narrative and discover the transformative power that lies within each of us. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like this video, and share it with your friends and loved ones. By doing so, you'll help us continue to bring you captivating stories that provoke deep thought and ignite the spark of resilience within us all.